Part 36. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 351. King Wei's face was as dark as water, and his eyes were so cold that they could kill someone. It's a pity that Xiejin didn't accept his trick. Mr. Lin Xiejin turned around and ordered in a lazy and leisurely voice, starting tonight, you will be responsible for preparing Aunt Jiao's medicinal materials. I will send the Xie family's men to the Thai hospital to get them. Without my order, no one can get them from the Thai hospital. The hospital took the medicine away. Dr. Lin nodded to express his understanding. Aliu. The maid came out of the house and said, Master. I'll ask Ding Feng to deliver medicine tonight. Don't take medicine from anyone else except him. The maid took the order, yes. After arranging everything, Xiejin asked Dr. Lin to go with him to Xie's house again, and then walked out with Xian Yuan Chen. Xian Yuan Yan stopped in front of him and said coldly, Mr. Xie, does Prince Wei's mansion belong to you? Can you come and go as you please? As soon as he finished speaking, there was a burst of messy footsteps, and then dozens of palace guards came rushing over with swords and sharp weapons, blocking the path of Xiejin and Xian Yuan Chen with great momentum. Prince Yan wants to fight with me. Xiejin put his hands behind his hands and looked at the battle in front of him. He raised his eyebrows casually, with a sarcastic smile in his pair of extremely beautiful red phoenix eyes. Xie came today under the orders of the East Palace. If you really take action, it will not be a simple act of impulsiveness, but a blatant act of disobedience. Prince Yan had better think clearly about the consequences. What are the consequences? Xian Yuan Yan's expression was gloomy. I don't believe that the emperor's grandfather will kill me. Someone, take it down. Xiejin smiled leisurely, and his smile was breathtaking. The emperor will not kill you, because this matter will not be reported to the Dajhan Palace at all. The people in the palace who are now in charge of the power of the government are Princess Feng and the regent. King, this is a fact that everyone in the civil and military dynasties knows. Prince Yan still thinks that the Princess Feng who was brought back is just a decoration. Xian Yuan Yan sneered, you said that following the orders of the East Palace is the order of the East Palace. Who can prove that what you said is true? The handwriting of the Prince of the East Palace should be able to prove it. Xiejin narrowed his eyes and slowly took out an order and a black iron token from the sleeves of his robe, raised it high and displayed it in front of Xian Yuan Yan, so that he could see clearly. If these two things are not enough, Xie will have to let the imperial army prove it. As he said that, he put away the token and turned to look at King Wei. My lord, do you want to see how the imperial army surrounded the palace of King Wei during a cup of tea? King Wei's face was gloomy and livid, and he became even more furious when he heard this, almost wishing for someone to hack him. However, he knew that Xiejin was a man of his word, and he would definitely do what he said. Xiaju of the Xie family was someone that the entire imperial capital did not dare to offend. Xian Yuan Yan had repeatedly shown kindness to him when he was still the emperor's grandson, but Xiejin didn't even bother to pay attention to him. He spent all day talking to several young masters in the imperial capital. They hang out together, either going to restaurants to drink or going to casinos to spend money, which is more arrogant than the prince. Xian Yuan Yan had expressed his dissatisfaction with Xiejin more than once in the past, but later his health became worse and worse. He dealt with imperial doctors and decoctions all day long and did not have so much energy to pay attention to him, so he stopped for a while. Unexpectedly, we would meet again in this way today. After all, King Wei had eaten more than his son for decades. After being silent for a long time, he finally gritted his teeth and raised his hand to signal the guards to retreat. Let him go. Father, Xian Yuan Yan's expression changed. Prince Yan's moral practice is obviously not deep enough. He only cares about his temporary ambitions but ignores the consequences that will follow. Xiejin curled his lips, walked up to Xian Yuan Yan, and stretched out his hand as if to pat him. Face, but paused when the fingertips were about to touch his cheek. His voice was lazy and cold. Practice well, the good time should be used to study and practice martial arts, learn to be an upright and kind person, rather than studying how to be a beast. After saying that, he ignored Xian Yuanyan's suddenly gloomy expression, greeted Xian Yuanchen lightly, and Shi Shiren left the backyard of the palace. The young man in plain clothes followed behind, silent from beginning to end, but he saw with his own eyes that a person's arrogance can also be so elegant and noble, just like the gentle lion described by Xian Yuanyao, combining domineering and cruelty. It's all hidden in his bones, and his arrogance is just right to cover up with nonchalance. But no matter how well he conceals it, as long as someone tears open this elegant veil, you can still easily feel the aloofness and arrogance in him that belongs to a true nobleman. Xian Yuanchen narrowed his eyes. People are born different. Some are as humble as dust, while others are so noble that people can only look up to them. After walking out of the palace gate, Xiejin signaled him to get on Xie's carriage. The spacious carriage was covered with soft blankets. Xian Yuanchen put the baggage aside and did not dare to really sit on an equal footing with Xiejin. Instead, he sat on the floor in the carriage. Spoke humbly and gently, "Master Ju, when will I go to the East Palace to obey orders?" Xiejin leaned against the carriage and looked at his face casually. "What?" "The regent asked me to be his chamberlain," Xian Yuanchen said truthfully. "I don't dare to trouble Lord Nine." "Don't be so arrogant," Xiejin said calmly. "No matter how concubine you are still the prince's son. You don't have to be so humble in front of me. Just call me by my name." Xian Yuanchen narrowed his eyes and said, "Ju Ye has promoted me, but I can't. I have a bad temper, I like to be obedient, and I don't like others to contradict me in front of me." Xiejin said in a loose voice, "You can call me whatever I ask you to do. How come there is so much nonsense?" Xian Yuanchen fell silent, not knowing what to do for a moment. But Xiejin obviously had no intention of letting him go, and said casually, "Take off your clothes." Xian Yuanchen's face changed, and he suddenly raised his eyes. "Master Ju. Why are you nervous?" Xiejin frowned. "Do you really think I'm interested in you? Take off your clothes, let me see your injuries." Xian Yuanchen suddenly felt that the spacious carriage also made him a little breathless, and subconsciously clutched his robe. I didn't. If you want to let Dr. Lin see it, it's okay." Xiejin casually, "The Prince of Wei's mansion is not far from the Xie family. When we return to the Xie family, let him see you." Xian Yuanchen finally understood why he asked Dr. Lin to follow him to the Xie family. The corners of his lips were pursed, and his body froze for a while. Xiejin didn't urge him, and his handsome eyebrows and eyes were always light, without any waves. Xian Yuanchen pursed his lips and remained silent for a while. I'm used to the injuries on my body. It's nothing. There's no need to ask the imperial physician to see it. Please give Ah Chen some face." Xiejin's eyebrows showed impatience. "What is face? Can it be eaten? Author has something to say. Thank you for the gifts from the little cuties these 2 days. I will add another one later. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 352. Face cannot be eaten as food. But it's okay to skip a meal or two occasionally, but I really can't let go of my face. Although he has long been unqualified to talk about face issues. Xian Yuanchen narrowed his eyes, his originally pale face turned paler now, and the corners of his lips were pursed tightly. It looked like there was a battle between heaven and man in his heart, and he was struggling extremely painfully. "Okay, if you don't want to take it off, Don't take it off. Xiejin frowned slightly, looking at your humiliated expression. It seems as if I have become an old madam who forces girls into prostitution. Xian Yuan Chen breathed a sigh of relief, lowered his eyes and said, it's Ah Chen who doesn't know what's good and what's good. Thank you Ju Ye for your consideration. Xiejin sneered, they are all men, why are they so coy? Do you really think that I am a man of both genders? Xian Yuan Chen really didn't know how to answer this topic. He has hardly interacted with anyone in these years. The people he has interacted with the most are his mother and the servants of Prince Wei's palace. The people he has endured the most are the abuse and torture from his brother-in-law. Other than that, he has been with Shu Mo. His thinking and cognition are actually very simple. He has never even experienced the first love between a boy and a girl. It is normal for him to be unable to let go between words. On the other hand, Xiejin has never tabooed meat and vegetables. He experienced the love between fish and water when he was 16 or 17 years old. Huan, there are countless beautiful concubines waiting to serve him in the yard, and he has an unscrupulous temper, and no words coming out of his mouth seem to be against the rules. After all, this person has never been associated with a gentleman, and he is a completely different type of person from Xian Yuan Chen who adheres to the way of a gentleman. Therefore, Xian Yuan Chen couldn't deal with this kind of topic between men and women at all, and could only remain embarrassed and silent. Fortunately, Xiejin really didn't have any interest in him. Seeing that he was cautious, he didn't embarrass him anymore. Returning to Xie's house, Xiejin arranged a temporary residence for Xian Yuan Chen, right next to his courtyard, and asked Dr. Lin to take a look at his injuries. Xian Yuan Chen naturally refused. Xiejin's tone sounded light, no matter what face you care about, you still have to look at the injury. Self-esteem and face are sometimes the least valuable things. Xian Yuan Chen pursed his lips and said nothing. It was indeed worthless, but it was the only thing he had and he still wanted to protect it. Xie has a large family, and people's hearts are complicated. Don't run around while you live here for the time being, Xiejin said calmly, stay here honestly, no one dares to come and trouble you. Take good care of your body. After Princess Feng's enthronement ceremony, you come into the palace again. Xian Yuan Chen responded. Xiejin turned and left. After walking out of Jinyuan, he looked up at the sky and felt as if he had picked up trouble and left it beside him. Fortunately, this trouble will not stay here for long, but with such a gentle look, I'm afraid it will be easier for him when he comes to the master in the palace in the future. Xiejin shook his head. As night fell, lights were lit in the East Palace. The bright and soft light made the woman's face delicate and beautiful, and she was incomparably beautiful. Nan 11, who had just taken a bath, was wearing a loose and thick robe, lazily leaning on the bedside. The handsome man beside her was squeezing her ankles with his eyes closed, and a pair of long and powerful hands pressed from calf to thigh. Then he gently stroked her swollen belly, with cherished and careful movements, feeling the strong vitality of the little child in her belly. The crisp and clean breath lingered on her nose. Nan 11 glanced sideways at him, smiled and leaned over to kiss his face. Ayu. Rong Yu's heart was throbbing and tender, and he stretched out his hands to take her into his arms. I like this name, please call her 2 more times. Ayu, Ayu, Ayu. Nan 11's voice was soft and smiling, almost all the forces in Dongling are under your control. Today, you have taken in 2 more teenagers. After you ascend the throne, even if the Dongling courtiers are dissatisfied, they probably won't be able to make any waste. Rong Yu lowered his head and kissed her lips. His hot lips extended all the way from her chin to her delicate neck. The kiss made Nan 11's breath a little unsteady. Ayu, I'm talking to you about something serious. I know. Rong Yu's voice was low and soft, and he buried his head quietly in her neck. Don't worry, I won't mess around. Nan 11 felt his greed and dependence, raised her hand and touched his head. Do you still feel uneasy in the past 2 days? Wrong, you said nothing. Ew. The uneasiness is always there. Wrong, you slowly raised her head, her dark pupils locked on her brows. Unless you stay true to me, give me a sufficient sense of security, and promise to only like me in this life, you won't look at other men more, ignore the minister's advice to choose a husband, only see me in your eyes, and only think about me in your heart. Wrong, you Nan 11 frowned slightly and looked at him with tangled eyes. You can lock me up. Wrong, you said nothing. Although Nan 11 felt sorry for him, she still had to argue with reason when it was time to argue. I will not choose another emperor's husband. These matters are originally decided by you. If the ministers have such suggestions in the future, they can ignore it. Just listen, don't take it seriously, but if you say you don't look at other men, it's hard to do. Wrong, you looked at her silently, her thin lips pursed tightly, as if she was a little aggrieved. Nan 11 was silent for a moment and reached out to touch his handsome face. If Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao see your expression at this time, I wonder how they will react. Wrong, you said nothing and looked at her steadily. All the civil and military officials in the court are men. Do I have to cover my eyes when I go to court in the future? Nan 11 laughed and kissed his face. This request seems a bit overbearing, but if you can go to court on my behalf, I think there is nothing wrong with it. Her words made Wrong Yu feel that he was making trouble for no reason. Am I annoying? Wrong Yu said in a low voice. 11 Why, Nan 11 said docilely, I just like you like this. Wrong Yu's eyebrows were soft, and a light flashed in his dark eyes. The corners of his lips couldn't help but curl up. I was just teasing you. I'm telling you the truth. Nan 11 raised her eyebrows. Anyway, I don't have any ambitions in this life. I just need to be responsible for loving you well. You can worry about everything else. I don't want to be so tired. It was easy for Nan 11 to hand over all the dominance to him and give him enough sense of security. Wrong Yu shook his head. Dongling Zhongshan belongs to you. Nan 11 raised an eyebrow. Ew, have you never been able to get over the relationship between Empress Jinghua and Rong Huijin? He seemed very persistent in letting her be the empress. No, Rong Yu's voice was gentle. This is our fate, and we can't disobey it. Author has something to say. Good night, babies. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 353. What happened at the flower viewing party came to an end for now. Whether it was Xian Yuanyao who declared his loyalty in front of everyone, or Xiejin who made it difficult to see through his thoughts, or the speculation caused by some not-so-good episodes at the palace banquet, although the aftermath has not passed yet, it is temporarily all fell silent. Because the princes and ladies of the major aristocratic families who can be invited to the palace are all people with brains, who know what is important and what is important, understand the situation at hand, and know how to stay calm at the right time. It's just that there seem to be more new faces in the imperial city in recent days. I have received some news one after another. 2 days ago Chu Nanyi put several pieces of information on the case. His Royal Highness's enthronement ceremony should be very lively. For 3 consecutive days after the flower viewing banquet, Xian Yuanyao, Chu Nanyi, and Xiejin would enter the palace to discuss government affairs with the regent. And because Nan 11's fetal position was stable, her pulse was stable, and she was in good health, they would all be in Rong Yu's house during these days. Participate in the audit accompanied by others. Rong Yu has been using practical actions to prove that Dongling's country belongs to Nan 11, that the emperor who is about to ascend the throne in Dongling is Nan 11, the queen, and that the real master in power is Nan 11, not him, the regent. This can be seen from the attitudes of Xiejin and Chu Nanyi when they spoke. There have been many foreign faces in the imperial city in the past 2 days. Chu Nanyi stood in front of the case, a hint of interest appearing in his gentle brows. There are also a few pretty young people. Xiejin sat in a chair nearby, holding his chin. Are you as beautiful as me? Chu Nanyi glanced at him. If it's purely about beauty, you may not necessarily be able to beat them, because these young men here are all selected from thousands of countries. Their beauty is extraordinary, comparable to that of courtesans in brothels. Xiejin raised his eyebrows. You want to use your beauty to seduce me, Queen Dongling? Chu Nanyi nodded. That's probably the case. Your Majesty the Queen, what do you think? Xiejin turned his head and looked at Nan 11, who was sitting on the couch in front of the window drinking tea and eating snacks. The royal families of various countries are ready to send you beautiful boys. Nan 11 took a sip of tea and said calmly, I am not Her Majesty the Queen yet. If anyone who cares hears these words, be careful of your head moving. It doesn't matter, Xiejin smiled casually, with the regent here, my head can't be moved. Don't be too confident, Qian Yuanyao spoke unhurriedly, with a leisurely and comfortable tone, with a hint of joking. With your troublesome appearance, maybe one day it will be our regent who takes your head. Your Highness. As soon as he finished speaking, several pairs of eyes in the hall fell on him in unison. Chu Nanyi thought he was so brave, teasing his master in front of him, saying that the 40 military cane was too light. Xiejin raised his eyes slightly, feeling that this baby was so cute and could always bring a little joy to others at the right time, so he leisurely raised one leg and looked at him with his chin on his head. Ah Yao, this is a disguise. Compliment me for being good-looking. What's the use of a good-looking man? Xian Yuanyao said lightly. Can he be eaten as a meal? Yes, you can eat soft rice. Xiejin raised the corners of his lips and smiled seductively. Little girls all like good-looking ones, just like men like beautiful women. Xian Yuanyao was suffocated and couldn't help but look at his face seriously. Xiejin was not restrained, and just let him look at him so generously, and even blinked in a very cooperative manner, which only made Xian Yuanyao feel numb all over. Ajin is really a monster, Xian Yuanyao sighed. If you really want to eat soft rice, I think looking at the entire Dongling, there is probably only soft food for you to eat from Her Majesty the Queen. After all, with the Xie family's family background, the average daughter's family cannot afford to raise such a noble little pretty face. Xiejin frowned and thought for a moment, then said honestly, I can't afford Her Majesty's soft rice. Xian Yuanyao raised his eyebrows. You can take the initiative to stay humble and be small. Although I think it's interesting to listen to you talk, I feel that all of you can go out to tell stories and perform arts. Nan 11 sipped her tea and spoke slowly, but smart people can't just be happy for the moment, they also have to think about it. Will there be any serious consequences if these words are spoken? After all, as far as I know, if someone is jealous, his relatives will not recognize him. Who is responsible if he is accidentally killed? Nan 11 truly admires these brave guys. They dared to make these jokes in front of Rong Yu, and they were not worried that Rong Yu would just order people to pull them out and kill them with sticks, making the whole house happy. What your highness said is so heartbreaking, Xiejin sighed. Who are you doing for? Aren't you discussing how to deal with those people with ulterior motives from all over the world who come here with the attitude of offering their beauties? What if, your majesty? If you can't even tell this, you will only unjustly kill loyal ministers and good generals, which will hurt the hearts of us loyal ministers. Nan 11 smiled lightly. What's the use of telling me? It's not up to me to decide whether you can tell the difference. After she finished speaking, she turned her eyes slightly and looked at the man who was sitting behind the desk reading the information. When her gaze caught her, Rong Yu raised his eyes and looked over. His tone was calm. The Xie family's Xiaju has never experienced courtship in his whole life. If 11er is interested, he can experience the taste of the staff later. Quan should be used to establish authority before ascending the throne. Nan 11 laughed. Xiejin raised his eyebrows slightly. Since my uncle knows that I am delicate and rich, do you really have the heart to use me to establish your power? Uncle. As soon as this title came out, the hall suddenly fell into a brief silence. Nan 11 looked at Rongyu in surprise, and Xian Yuanyao and Chu Nanyi also had surprised expressions. Obviously, no one expected that Xiejin and Rongyu actually had such an unknown relationship. However, in this way, they finally understood why Xiejin, the proud and noble eldest son of the Xie family, was so easily obedient to Rongyu, the regent of the great Zhou dynasty. It turned out that there was another hidden story. I thought there were such coincidences in the world, and everyone had the same experience as me. Xian Yuanyao touched his nose and muttered to himself, it turns out that he was not tamed by the whip. Tamed by the whip, Xiejin raised his eyebrows, so Ayao likes this. Your head is fine. Xian Yuanyao stood close to the desk. Hearing this, he picked up the memorial on the desk and threw it at him, take my move. Xiejin did not dodge, watching the memorial flying towards him, calmly stretched out his hand to catch it, and said indifferently, you dare to throw even the memorial, you are simply disrespectful to the emperor, you should be dragged out and beaten to death immediately. The Lord just said, let you taste the taste of the court caning first. Qian Yuanyao turned around and sat down in the chair, snorting coldly, the Lord has always handled official affairs impartially, and does not recognize relatives. Don't think that you can be domineering just because you are related. Xiejin raised his eyebrows, Ayao is so cute, you say so nicely, why don't you say a few more words? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 354. Are you poor enough? Rongyu raised his head, his voice was indifferent and dignified, let's get down to business. Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao fell silent at the same time. Chu Nanyi, who kept his composure, raised the corner of his mouth, and glanced teasingly at the two people who were frightened for a moment, and said calmly, I see that Mr. Xieju and Prince Yao seem to be very close to each other. Master, do you want to match them up? Let's just match them up. Mate with him. Can he have children? Xian Yuanyao sneered coldly, my father is just a son like me. He will carry on the family line in the future. How many children can he give me? He can be a bed warmer. Although I don't have any hobby in this area, considering Ajin's good looks, I can reluctantly accept it. Bed warmer? Xiejin Danfeng's eyes narrowed, and the smile on his lips looked chilling to the bones, I just said that Yao Yao is cute. The more I say it, the cuter it becomes. Believe it or not, I will wash you off and throw you on the bed tonight. Xian Yuanyao put a provocative smile on his lips and was about to speak when he saw Rongyu raising his head expressionlessly, her cold eyes falling on his face, like an invisible coercion that shrouded him, making his heart tremble. The smile just froze at the corner of his mouth. All the words he wanted to say were naturally choked back. Rongyu turned his eyes slightly and looked at Xiejin indifferently, how about I give you another half hour to make you poor enough? Xiejin sat up straighter and shook his head obediently, no need. The atmosphere was a bit stagnant. Nan 11, who was sitting on the couch, held a cup of fragrant tea in her hand and looked out the window at the blooming flowers. Her expression was leisurely and calm, and there was a soft luster between her eyebrows. She didn't know what she was thinking in her heart at this time. Chu Nanyi, the culprit who started the conversation, obviously felt a little embarrassed. He couldn't help but touch his nose and took the initiative to break the silence. Currently, the movements of all major aristocratic families are basically under control. Prince Ji and my little sister, the wedding is scheduled for the 16th day of the 12th lunar month. They will hold the wedding after His Highness ascends the throne. It is now settled. The two young masters that the master wanted to serve as attendants are safe. Mr. Chen is currently living in Xie's mansion. He has some serious injuries. Xiejin plans to ask the imperial doctor to treat him. He will also wait until the enthronement ceremony before entering the palace. Then he can just follow the master and serve as a student in the imperial study. At this point, Chu Nanyi added, The king of Wei and his wife and Xian Yuanyan are very dissatisfied with this matter. Rong Yu said nothing. He doesn't care about the attitude of King Wei. Xian Yuanyan will never have the opportunity to enter the court in the future. The situation in the palace of Wei is over, unless they have the ability to turn the tide, but obviously, if they really can turn the tide, they won't let the high priest take him back to the south. 11. He ended up in a situation where he lost his reserve position. Rong Yu raised his hand and took off the lid of the gilt incense burner on the desk, and slowly threw the information he had read into it one by one to burn it. The flames lit by the rice paper illuminated his noble and indifferent face, making him look even more noble and distant. Deep and unfathomable. Prince Jing's mansion doesn't need to worry about it anymore, and Prince Wei's mansion doesn't need to worry about it anymore. King Huainan has nothing to say. Chu Nanyi's eyes fell on the swaying flames, and his voice was steady. The Su family is from the Wei prince's mansion. At present, still standing on Xian Yuanyan's boat, Su Ce holds the power of the household department and has a lot of bad debts that cannot be sorted out. After His Highness ascends the throne, he can be the first to take advantage of him. The Su family has gained quite a lot of power over the years, so we definitely need to start teasing, but we don't have to be too anxious. Xie Jin stood up and walked to the case, taking a file from the desk. Here are the things I wrote down. For the list, we can first replace the powerful courtiers who belong to the Su family and Xian Yuanyan one by one, trim Su Ce's wings, and finally liquidate the Su family. Xian Yuanyao sat in a chair and drank tea. He is only responsible for guarding the border. The intrigues in the court have nothing to do with him, and he is not good at it, so he is only responsible for listening to whoever Xie Jin and Chu Nanyi deal with. Only one of the four major families, the Mo family, has an unclear position. Xie Jin's voice was light, but Mo Suanwu and Chu Hongii are enemies, so it would be difficult for him to serve as a general in the same dynasty as Chu Hongii without any grudges. If one of them can't do it well, maybe he will choose to stand on the same side as the Su family. Are the Mo family's young master and Hongyi enemies? Nan 11 seemed to be a little interested and curious when she heard this sentence. How could they become enemies? Chu Nanyi turned to look at her and took the initiative to explain with a gentle voice. Hongyi, the title of the general who governs the country, was originally supposed to belong to Mo Suanwu, but after Prince Ji came back from Zhou dynasty at the end of last year, he made some suggestions in front of the emperor. Basically, if we really want to bring your highness back, it would be better to have a female general at the top, which will make things easier. The emperor thought this was reasonable, so he agreed to Qi Shi's proposal and announced the matter in court the next day. Naturally, the Mahist family was dissatisfied and protested in court. Many ministers who supported the Mahist family also felt that Hongii was just a 15-year-old girl. Cannot be compared with Mo Suanwu at all. In the end, in order to convince all the ministers, the emperor arranged 3 competitions between Hongyi and Mo Suanwu. A single martial arts competition, a riding and shooting competition on the school field, and a battle between 2 armies in the military camp to compare formations and strategies. Mo Suanwu was successful in all 3 competitions. He was slightly inferior to Hongii, suffered a loss of face, and lost his title of general, and the two had a bad relationship from then on. Chu Yinjia was originally a cabinet minister, an out-and-out civil servant, while the Mo family was a real family of military commanders. Although the two families were not on the same side, they had a relationship where they would nod when they met up and down, but Chu Yinjia, after the Hongii incident happened, the Mo family and the Chu family directly became sworn enemies. Nan 11 did not expect that such a thing would happen to Chu Hongii. After a moment of silence, he said, "The title of General of the State is naturally awarded to those who are capable. Defending the country cannot be neglected. Besides, the imperial decree promoted him. Does it mean that the title of general must belong to the Mahist school to be fair? If everyone can think like your highness, the world will be peaceful. How can there be so many people die for money, birds die for food? Chu Nanyi shook his head. Don't say that. The Mahist school is not satisfied. Even the Xie family and the Chu family, and even the Huainan palace, are willing to do it because they have enough benefits. We are willing to be loyal to His Highness and the regent. Without these benefits, what reason do we have to devote ourselves to the king? Nan 11 looked at him in surprise, surprised by his straightforwardness and boldness. You are very courageous. Chu Nanyi smiled lightly. I am telling the truth, and I dare not use clever words to deceive His Highness. Nan 11 raised his eyebrows. In this case, can you tell me what benefits wrong you promised you? Chu Nanyi was silent for a moment. I have obtained the freedom I want to the maximum extent, the power to control wealth, and the fulfillment and faith I feel in the process of following someone I want to follow. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 355. Nan 11 pondered his words and smiled faintly. Actually, the last sentence is the key point. The freedom he wants to the maximum extent. If he really only wants freedom, he will not choose to obey others. With the family background of the Chu family, it is enough for Chu Nanyi to have no worries about food and clothing for a lifetime. Although Chu Nanyi is also a bastard, he is obviously living a good life as a bastard. From Chu Xuanyi and Chu Hong'ai, we can see that the family style of the Chu family is open-minded and there is not much harshness and restriction on bastards. If Chu Nanyi does not want to choose fame and fortune, but would rather live a plain life, such a request should not be difficult to achieve. If a person has nothing to ask for, he can naturally let his mind be free. As for the power to control wealth, in Nan 11's view, this is more of an excuse. For a person who doesn't care about fame and fortune, what is the use of controlling so much wealth? Give up the rich to help the poor? Save the people of the world? Isn't the so-called control still managing the industry for the master? Maybe wrong use personality is too charming, or maybe Nan 11 thinks her husband is good in every way, so she thinks Chu Nanyi's last sentence is the truth. Whether it's Xiejin or Xian Yuanyao, or Chu Nanyi, Amo Lingan, Qin Shu and others. They are born rich and grow up in splendor. They are arrogant by nature and will not compromise easily. Unless they meet someone who makes them willing to bow their heads and surrender, otherwise, can a mere benefit make them bend their pride? Being loyal to Rong Yu and being loyal to the emperor are two different choices. Nan 11 smiled lightly. Even if you don't show your loyalty, as long as you are loyal and fulfill your duties in the future, your respective families can still get the fame and fortune they deserve. Chu Nanyi was stunned when she said this, and then looked at her silently. Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao obviously understood what she meant. They raised their eyebrows almost at the same time, and looked at Nan 11 with a strange luster in their eyes. What a transparent woman! Indeed, with the family background of the Xie family and the style of the Prime Minister Xie, and the confidence of the King of Huainan, who is low-key and peaceful but still capable of self-preservation, even if Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao do not choose Rong Yu, and only exist in the simplest monarch-subject relationship, the Xie family and the King of Huainan can still get everything they could have gotten. As long as they do not commit treason and rebellion, the glory and wealth will always be there. The so-called interests and benefits are just a reason for them to follow and submit. The person they are willing to submit to is Rong Yu, not the identity of regent or empress, nor the monarch-subject hierarchy that suppresses them, but the spiritual submission. The reason why these proud men are willing to call Lord is because Rong Yu has been recognized by them, not because of the benefits given to them. Nan 11 smiled and turned to look out the window. See through but don't say it. After all, men all want face. This episode passed in a flash, and the few people quickly turned back to the main business. The attitudes of the civil and military officials in the court, the positions of the major families, and the outsiders who appeared in the imperial city in recent days were all laid out one by one in the meticulous and well thought out plans of these people. Nan 11 sighed lightly. Rongyu was simply a natural overlord who was delayed by love. If he were to rule the world, the ambitions of various countries might be his opportunity. With so many loyal ministers and generals following him without regrets, and military power, financial power, and counselors in hand, how difficult would it be to unify the 9 provinces? Do these brilliant men also secretly hope to assist him in becoming an emperor of the ages and leave their names in history? Author's words. This chapter is an extra chapter. There is not enough time, so the word count is a bit short, 1000 words. Good night. The coronation ceremony is coming soon. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 356. But on second thought, if it wasn't for her, Rongyu wouldn't have to work so hard. He could enjoy a lifetime of wealth and glory in the Great Zhou. Why would he need to bother planning? Even sleeping well would become a luxury. Nan 11 sighed softly and quietly looked at the scenery outside the window. Suddenly, he wanted to know the story between Empress Jinghua and Rong Huijin. Whether it was a beautiful past or an unforgettable grief, it was part of his memory, unforgettable, deeply rooted in his heart, and gradually became an obsession. At noon, Mo Lingan came over and brought the information Qin Shu had just obtained. Rongyu didn't say anything after reading the intelligence. He just explained a few things and made proper arrangements for the most likely situations at the coronation ceremony. Finally, he said calmly, no matter which country proposes a marriage, the 4 of you will be responsible for responding. If necessary, arrange Xianyu and Qi as well. Xiejin raised his eyebrows and couldn't help but muttered, it sounds like we are here to block knives. Not to block knives, but to block peach blossoms. Xianyu Enyao stretched out his hand and pulled his hair. Who has the heart to let Ajin block knives? How dare you? Xiejin glanced at him, you dare to pull the hair of Master Zhu, don't you want your claws anymore? Xianyu Enyao raised his eyebrows and stretched out his hand arrogantly towards him. Slender and beautiful 5 fingers, what do you want to do? Go and do your work. Rongyu stood up and ordered them to leave coldly. Before the coronation ceremony, keep an eye on me. If anyone makes a mistake, don't blame me for letting you have a taste of the court caning. Tisk. Xianyu Enyao curled his lips, the master is really cold and ruthless. He is so cold in front of us, but he instantly turns into a soft and gentle person in front of Princess Feng. With these 2 faces, aren't you afraid that people will feel unbalanced? Xiejin nodded, that makes sense. Nan 11 was really shot even when she was sitting. Hearing this, she turned her head and said with a smile, how about I talk to Rongyu and be gentle to you in the future? Gentle? Xianyu Enyao imagined Rongyu's gentleness towards them and shuddered, forget it. I am born cheap and cannot bear the master's gentleness. I think you have been itching for trouble recently. Mo Lingan threw away his folding fan. You dare to compete for favor in front of Princess Feng. In my opinion, it is better to send you directly to the inner court and kill you once and for all. Then you can go in and out of the front court and harem openly and serve tea to Princess Feng every day. In this way, you can often see the master's gentle face and enjoy the blessing. Nan 11 was shocked. Killing it once and for all? She thought Rongyu's men were very interesting. It was a pleasure to listen to them talk. Compared with the storytellers in the tea house outside, they were even better and could make people happy. Fortunately, Xianyu Enyao and Xiejin were all sensible and understood their master's temper. It was obvious that he was going to enjoy a world of 2 with his beloved wife after finishing the business. If they continued to stay, they would be in trouble. So the 4 of them quickly left. Before leaving, Xiejin said without thinking, if the beautiful boys sent by various countries are really stunning, Princess Feng might consider keeping a few of them in the harem. Even if they do nothing, it will be comfortable to look at them. right. In order to avoid facing Rong Yu's noble and handsome face that is always covered with frost all day long, it would be boring after a long time. How much freshness can be retained by changing the taste? However, Xiejin was a smart man. As soon as he finished speaking, he flashed and disappeared in an instant. He was worried that he would be silenced if he was a step slower. Xian Yuanyao and Mo Ling'an obviously didn't expect him to say such a thing, let alone run so fast. They looked at each other with Chu Nanyi and the other two, then left without saying a word, lowering their eyebrows and eyes, not daring to look at Rong Yu's expression at this time. Nan 11 was calm, and there was even a faint smile on the corner of her lips. She watched silently as several people turned around and walked out one after another, and it seemed that she had completely lost the arrogance when she was teasing each other just now. Very happy, a low and pleasant voice sounded, and Rong Yuren had walked to her side, picked up the teacup in her hand and brought it to his lips, and drank a sip of tea. How do you feel? Nan 11's teacup was intercepted by him, and her hands were empty, so she naturally raised her hand to support her chin and looked up at him. Are you asking about my physical feeling or my mood? The girl leaned against the window, the sun shone on her bright and beautiful eyebrows, her slender white fingers supported her chin, and her eyes were full of gentle smiles when she looked at him. Such a scene is undoubtedly the most beautiful picture in Rong Yu's sight. His heart was throbbing, and he couldn't help but lower his head and kiss her red lips. His voice was low and soft. You have to care about your body and your mood. Nan 11's eyebrows became softer, and she smiled. Xian Yuanyao said, you have two faces, what do you think? Don't pay attention to him. Rong Yu sat down beside her, holding her in his arms, and the two leaned against the window together, basking in the warm sunshine. Have a good rest these 2 days. Although the coronation ceremony is as simple as possible, it is also very tiring, and you need to rest your spirit. Nan 11 hummed, why would Xiejin call you uncle? Her mother is the princess of Dezhou, the daughter of a deceased prince. Nan 11 was surprised. Did you arrange this too? How is it possible? Rong Yu laughed. When she married into Dongling, I was just born not long ago. Even if I have the ability to defy the heavens, I can't really plan so far. Do you think I'm a god? Nan 11 said, marriage. It's not a marriage, Rong Yu said calmly. With Prime Minister Xie's temper, the emperor can't decide if he doesn't want to marry a woman. Nan 11 understood. So the Xie couple should be truly in love. It seems that this princess, who is also from the royal family of the Great Zhou, is also a unique woman. It's not easy to make Prime Minister Xie, who was said to be very romantic back then, calm down and concentrate on being a maniac who dotes on his wife and children. Nan 11 frowned and smiled lightly. This is a coincidence, but what's rare is that Xiejin is willing to listen to you. After all, even if there is this relationship of uncle, one is from the Great Zhou and the other is a native of Dongling. With Xiejin's temper, it is probably difficult for him to be willing to listen to Rong Yu just because of this blood relationship. Rong Yu seemed to want to tell her something, but when the words came to his lips, he smiled and said, 11 why don't you guess? Guess how Xiejin was conquered by you? Nan 11 raised her eyebrows. Don't laugh at me if I'm wrong. Rong Yu said, I dare not. Nan 11 pondered for a moment. First of all, loyalty to the emperor is an attitude that a family must have. Both Xie Xiaofu and Xiejin understand this, so there is nothing to struggle about. Rong Yu hummed and agreed with her. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article feed, placement, below article feed, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 357. If it were an ordinary prince seizing the throne, Chief Xie might stay out of the matter and not want to wade into troubled waters easily. But if they knew in advance who the next emperor would be, their attitude would be different. In addition, you and Mrsya have this kind of relationship. Due to the blood relationship, the Xia family at least has an advantage that other families do not have. Rongyu pursed her lips, and the gaze on her face was as soft as cotton wool, with a strange luster floating in her eyes. Xiejin is a smart man, and you are a powerful regent. It only takes a few contacts to see whether you are worthy of his loyalty. Nan 11 leaned on his arm, her voice gentle. Smart people weigh it in their hearts. After considering the pros and cons, you will naturally know how to choose. However, what you need is definitely not a minister who weighs the pros and cons, but a confidant who follows you loyally. Even if he does not say that he will die for you, he must be absolutely loyal and reliable. He must not be under any circumstances. Stab the knife in the back. As for how to make a nobleman like Xiejin willing to obey orders, it naturally depends on Rongyu's own strength and means. As long as he uses the right method, there is nothing he can't do. For Rongyu, the emperor's mental skills and controlling his wrists were just one of his innate abilities that had long been integrated into his blood. Just like eating and training, it was something he had long been accustomed to and could learn without a teacher. At least it's much easier than chasing a wife. As for whether he is truly self-taught, Rongyu himself knows it, and Nan 11 probably understands it in her heart. However, her analysis still made Rongyu's heart throb. Your Highness is so intelligent and transparent that no one can match him. Nan 11 raised her eyebrows. Flatter me. Rongyu's voice was low. I speak from the bottom of my heart. You just told Xiejin and the others that if any country proposes a marriage, let them handle it. Nan 11 looked at Rongyu with a smile. Does this mean that every time a minister advises me to choose a husband, just pull them out as a shield? Rongyu was silent for a moment. Do you think I am scheming? Nan 11 raised her lips and smiled. I just like how thoughtful you are. Xiejin, Chu Nanyi, Xianyuan Yao, Mo Lingan, and Xianyuan Qi, who is as beautiful as a flower. Any one of these young men who are pulled out is a handsome and distinguished nobleman with an extraordinary bearing. He is as gentle as jade, has a noble temperament, and is exquisite and beautiful. Who dares to compete with them? I'm afraid that all those who want to enter the palace will be overshadowed and ashamed in front of these few people. Well, the scheming is indeed deep enough. Rongyu raised the corner of his lips and turned to look out the window. The weather is nice today. Do you want to go out for a walk? Nan 11 thought for a while and nodded. Okay. Getting up from the couch, Yunya brought a cloak and wrapped it around her. Rongyu folded it carefully for her before holding her hand and walking out of the palace. The sun is shining and the years are quiet. For those who are full of heart, in their free time, they can hold the hand of their beloved and walk along the garden paths, feeling the warmth of the sun, the freshness of the air, looking at the vast blue sky, and turning their heads to see his features. Probably, this is the happiness that most people yearn for. Nan 11's steps were gentle and her eyes were calm and soft. The country, the people in the world, power and fame, the rise and fall of the family, seemed to have always been far away from her. Even though the enthronement ceremony was right in front of her, she seemed not to have entered such a role at all. There was an omnipotent person beside her who thought everything out for her and solved every aspect perfectly. She didn't have to worry about it at all. Even though he was always looking at her with unusually bright eyes and always emphasizing on his lips the country is her country, and she is the destined queen of Dongling, but Nan 11 knows that these are just Rongyu's obsessions. She knew that she was just a boudoir girl. Her mind is not that big, and her vision is not that broad. The only people she really cares about are her closest relatives, her mother, Rongyu, and the child in her belly. However, Nan 11 also knew that Rongyu was always serious about asking her to be the queen, otherwise he would not have started carefully planning so many years ago. So whether she had this ambition or not, even if it was just because he had put so much effort into laying out such a big game early, she would do her best to fulfill his wish. I haven't seen my mother recently, Nan 11 asked. Is she very busy after she comes back? It's quite busy. Most of the time, I sit down with the ladies from the aristocratic family to drink tea and chat. Rong Yu smiled lightly. Mother-in-law is now the most popular person in the entire imperial capital. All the ladies from the aristocratic family know what to do. Make a good relationship with her, and invite her to enjoy flowers today, and invite her to the theater tomorrow, and someone from the eldest princess's mansion will send you some rare treasures every day to relieve your boredom. When Nan 11 heard this, she was silent for a while. What's the point of trying to please my mother? My mother doesn't know how to whisper in my ears, so why not come directly to please me? Rong Yu raised her lips. Do you want them to please you? Nan 11 couldn't help but laugh and said, of course not, that's what I said. Rong Yu hummed. Mother-in-law has been away from Dongling for more than 10 years. She has become alienated from all her previous acquaintances, and even strangers to the younger generation of nobles and ladies. It is quite nice to have frequent contact with people during this period. Good. Nan 11 was silent for a moment. When I become the queen, should my mother be granted the title of eldest princess? You can ask your mother-in-law for her opinion, Rong Yu said, but I don't think she cares about this. Nan 11 nodded in agreement. If she cared about this, she wouldn't have lived in Dezhou for so many years incognito, and had to endure my father's heartless betrayal, and that arrogant concubine. At this point, her eyebrows moved slightly and she said calmly, Prince Yun oversees the country, and I don't know what's going on with my absent father. What do you want him to do? Nan 11 looked at the sky. Her voice was calm. I don't want anything to happen to him. Now my mother and I have nothing to do with him. We no longer have any feelings, and naturally there is no resentment. There is no need to be with him, it's a waste of time. However, Nan 11 knew better than anyone else that Nan Xingzi, who had lost the emperor's favor, trust, and protection, had lost his reputation. Everyone in the civil and military dynasties of the Great Zhou dynasty knew that he was in decline. The regent did not want to see him. The upright officials looked down on his ungrateful behavior of spoiling his concubine and killing his wife. They felt that he had brought his own fate. Ministers who were good at observing the trend also knew that he had lost power and would gradually distance yourself from him. Unless he changes his mind and becomes a good official and a good person in the future, and maybe retains the last bit of face, there will be no place for him in the court where King Yun is in power. However, what are the chances that a person like him can change his mind and become a good person? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 358. Change your ways? No. People like Nan Xingzi are born selfish, and their inherent greed and self-interest are difficult to change. Even if they end up in a miserable situation, they will never reflect on themselves. They will only put all the faults on others and vent their resentment and anger endlessly. Once they gain power, they forget their original intentions, and they think they are the chosen ones of heaven. After enjoying the glory and wealth, they have to maintain a clean reputation. After getting used to the respect and flattery of others, they lose power. The sudden drop from the clouds to the ground will make him lose control of his mentality. The resentment accumulated in his heart cannot find an outlet to vent, and he will become more and more gloomy and tyrannical. Even the concubine Li, who was once beautiful and sensible, seemed to have become hateful in an instant. Just like this moment. A series of shrill cries and begging for mercy came out from the house, which sounded particularly tragic. Ah! Stop it! Stop it, Nan Xingzi, stop it, ah! You are a jinx. The whip was whipped all over the place, accompanied by angry abuse. If it weren't for you, how could I have fallen to this point? When Yuanqi was here, you were always asking for money or stirring up trouble, and you even dreamed of the position of the mistress of the family. Now that Yuanqi is gone, the position of the mistress of the family is given to you. You should support this family for me. Bitch, I really regret letting you in. You are a Jenks. Bitch. The only 3 or 2 servants left in the mansion hid far away and didn't dare to get close. This situation has happened more than 10 times in a month, almost every 2 or 3 days. From the initial fear to the current habit, every time they see the master enter Madame Li's yard, they try to hide as far away as possible. Even Madame Li's biological daughter Nanjiao didn't dare to get close. Because when Nan Xingzi attacked Madame Li for the first time, Nanjiao also suffered. Since being demoted 3 levels by the regent, Nan Xingzi's status in the court has been getting worse day by day. Nanjiao's loss of virginity also made her ridiculed by the ladies of the imperial family, and her only son was expelled from school because of frequent fights. Nan Xingzi and the Li family are now like rats crossing the street, a joke in the eyes of all the noble families, and have almost no place to stand in the court. Nan Xingzi's temperament is getting more and more irritable, and the mother and daughter of the Li family, whom he liked before, have become the target of venting, so Nanjiao can only let her mother ask for help without help, and toss under the whip, making shrill screams. When Nan Xingzi is tired of beating, the screams will end. Bitch, Nan Xingzi threw away the whip angrily, turned around and walked out without looking back, his face gloomy and decadent. You are all a bunch of trash. Li curled up on the ground, her face pale, and she uttered painful moans. Her clothes were torn into pieces by the rips, and the pain all over her body made her unable to even get up. Nan Xingzi, Yuanqi, Nan 11. The gnashing voice accompanied by blood from the corners of her mouth, with a curse of deep hatred, I curse you, don't die well. Nan Xingzi has been having trouble recently, but when it rains, it pours. The more miserable he is, the more officials who used to be his enemies like to add insult to injury. They sent people to watch the movements of Nan Mansion almost day and night, wishing to find an opportunity to kill him immediately. So the news that Nan Xingzi beat Madame Li in the mansion soon spread widely, and soon aroused the dissatisfaction of the righteous gentlemen in the imperial capital and the condemnation of the censors in the court. Nan Xingzi has been getting more and more outrageous recently. He can't get any work done, and he takes it out on women all day long. Does he still have any manly integrity? In the imperial study, the censor who was responsible for supervising all officials frowned. Does Prince Yun let him be so manic? Prince Yun, who was sitting in a chair reading the memorial, raised his head. What else? What else? The censor's face turned green. Your Highness should give him some punishment. Punishment. Prince Yun lowered his head and continued to read the memorial. He has been very busy recently. There are Wenling, Qilin and Ling Ling, several young assistant ministers arranged by his uncle, and the virtuous prince and the cabinet ministers who are watching him work hard all day long. He doesn't even have any private time. He is either learning to read the memorial or busy reviewing the memorial. Of course, he has just started to learn to be a regent and has no experience. The uncle gave him great power, but it also takes time to hone it. So when he was reviewing the memorial and discussing matters in the imperial study, the virtuous prince and the cabinet ministers were there, as well as Wenling and Qilin. The approval of memorials requires the opinions of others. At this time, everyone's expression did not change after hearing the words of the censor. After all, everyone can see Nan Xingzi's current situation. Compared with the Nan Mansion, they are more concerned about the coronation ceremony of the Queen of Dongling. Is Prince Yun really not going to Dongling? The Minister of Rights asked. According to the report from the court spies, envoys from various countries have already arrived in Dongling, and they all brought gifts to congratulate the Empress on her coronation. If we don't go, will it be impolite? Prince Yun didn't take it seriously. Before the Emperor's uncle left the Great Zhou, he didn't tell me to attend any coronation ceremony. He just asked me to learn how to handle government affairs as soon as possible and handle the affairs of the Great Zhou. If I go to Dongling without authorization and make the Emperor's uncle unhappy, can you bear the responsibility? The Minister of Rights was choked when he heard this, but envoys from other countries have gone. So what, Prince Yun didn't care, I am only responsible for supervising the country and governing the country now, and I am not really the king of a country. Can I make the decision on such a thing? What are you talking about, my brother? King Ning frowned. My uncle is not in the Great Zhou now. Since you have taken on the important task of regent, you can make all the decisions. Besides, the ministers all think that Dongling should go. Whoever wants to go can go by themselves. Anyway, I won't go, King Yun said. My uncle said that if you are obedient, he will give you promotions when he comes back. If you don't obey, don't blame me for telling the truth. The ministers were silent instantly. Ever since the regent left the Great Zhou and the powerless King Yun became regent, his best move was threats. Threatening them with the regent always achieved the best results. But this time, the Minister of Rights said worriedly, if the prince does not go, will the regent be suspicious of the prince, thinking that the prince does not care about the regent and the queen of Dongling? Prince Yun put down the pen in his hand and looked up at the ministers in the imperial study. The uncle will not care about a little lack of courtesy, but if he leaves his post without permission and delays the government, the uncle will be furious. Who will bear his anger then? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 359. What a joke. The imperial uncle who is in charge of the military is not in the palace. If he, the prince who supervises the country, also leaves the imperial capital, who will be sent to the border to fight if the ambitious northern Xinjiang takes the opportunity to cause chaos? Qilin? Even if Qilin can lead the troops there, he must have someone who can give the order. It is a serious crime for a military general to mobilize troops without permission, without an order, so how can he do it randomly? King Yun snorted coldly in his heart, but always had a gentle and unfazed expression on his face. Dongling is a special existence independent of other countries. Because it does not participate in wars and is protected by the priest's hall, other countries usually have nothing to do with Dongling. We don't have much contact, but the Queen's accession to the throne this year has attracted the attention of so many countries. Haven't you ever thought about why? Prince Ning said calmly, isn't it because the regent is married to Queen Dongling? Yes, it is because of this relationship that they have to pay attention, King Yun said calmly. South Vietnam, Northern Xinjiang, and Ziki sent envoys to Zhou dynasty before with bad intentions, especially the ambitions of Northern Xinjiang, who have been coveting with regard to my territory in the Great Zhou dynasty. You only think about whether you will lose etiquette, but you have never thought about the consequences if the border is lost. As soon as the statement came out, all the cabinet ministers were silent, apparently feeling that his concern seemed reasonable. The more active countries become, the more we have to calm down. King Yun reached for a booklet and opened it. As for Nang Xingji, his rank was demoted by the emperor's uncle, but the emperor only demoted him, but I didn't say what duties would be assigned to him, so I can't make the decision without permission, so I'll leave him alone for the time being. You don't need to worry about his family affairs. If it goes too far, it won't be too late to deal with it later. It is difficult for an upright official to stop household affairs. What's more, they were just a couple fighting and didn't do anything else excessive, so why were they all so anxious and yelling? Can't you understand other people's feelings? He was divorced by his original wife, and now that he has lost the position of prime minister, Nanfu is now even more impoverished. When he was the prime minister, he was supported by his wife, and he disdained yellow and white things. Nan Xingzi was probably one of the very few honest officials in the court. Never engages in corruption or bribery, and is a clean and honest official. Now, even if you want to be greedy, you have no right to be greedy. He was in a bad mood, frustrated everywhere, and his daughter had lost her reputation early, which made him look shameless. Everyone in the court and the military looked at him as a joke. Naturally, he wanted to vent these unsatisfactory things accumulated in his heart, but things at home were always going on. You can't take it out on innocent people. Therefore, I can only feel wronged by Mrsli, who made her try her best to encourage her husband to spoil his concubine and destroy his wife. King Yun sighed. He was also helpless. Okay. Studying government affairs was very energy consuming, and he had to listen to the censors denounce these trivial matters from time to time. The key was that after hearing these things, he could not make his own decisions. Who knows if the emperor's uncle still had any sympathy for his father-in-law? Heart. What if after Nan 11 succeeded to the throne and became the queen of Dongling, she became kind-hearted, repaid evil with kindness, forgave her father, and then laughed away her grudges, and the whole family reunited? I have to say that His Royal Highness King Yun was really thinking far-reaching. After confirming his attitude, a group of ministers did not give up and finally asked, "So, Dongling will not go?" "I won't go," King Yun said. "If I really dissatisfy the emperor's uncle because of my impoliteness in the future, I will be the one to take the responsibility. It has nothing to do with you. You don't have to think too much. Then, don't worry about Mr. Nan's affairs for the time being." King Yun frowned and looked up at the well-fed adults in front of him. "You all have concubines at home. Have you ever done anything to your own concubines? Even if you haven't done anything, the head mistress of the family has the concubine done anything? Does the king have to go to every house to ask?" The questions left the adults speechless. After a moment of silence, someone whispered, "Isn't Ms. Li an equal wife?" King Yun smiled lightly. "Which law or regulation in the Zhou dynasty mentions equal wives?" There was silence again. Well, they understood what this man meant. They didn't intend to pay attention to Nanfu's affairs at all. They had a strong intention of letting it fend for itself. King Yun waved his hand. "If you don't have anything else to do, just step aside. Qi Lin and Wen Ling can stay." The ministers resigned. The wise king said in a gentle tone, "Although I have gradually mastered government affairs in the past 2 years, you don't have to push yourself too hard. Take your time and don't rush." King Yun smiled. "I know, thank you Uncle Xian for your concern." The ministers quickly resigned. The imperial study became quiet, and King Yun pondered for a moment. "Does your uncle have any instructions recently? The prince has not been gone for long. Dongling must be very busy recently. How can he have time to give instructions to Das Hu?" Qi Lin glanced at him and smiled lightly. "His Royal Highness, Prince Yun, misses the prince." "Miss your uncle?" King Yun felt cold for a moment and glared at him angrily. "I'm not the emperor's aunt, why do I miss the emperor's uncle?" Qi Lin smiled and said nothing. King Yun frowned. "Qi Lin, do you think it is possible for northern Xinjiang to take advantage of the emperor's uncle's absence in the Zhou dynasty to lead a cavalry attack?" Speaking of northern Xinjiang, Qi Lin looked serious and said calmly, "After 2 years of rest and recuperation in northern Xinjiang, there is a possibility of sending troops to attack at any time. However, the border defenses deployed by the prince are not easily broken by them, and because of this, considering the current in-law relationship between Dongling and Das Hu, Beijiang will consider it carefully even if it has the strength to fight, so His Royal Highness King Yun does not need to worry too much." King Yun hummed after hearing this. What he is really worried about is not whether northern Xinjiang will lead an attack, but the general trend of the world and whether Rongyu will really stay in Dongling in the future. Ever since the last time envoys from various countries came to Dezhou and showed a hostile attitude, King Yun felt that there would be some trouble in the world sooner or later. Although all countries went to Dongling under the banner of congratulations for the coronation ceremony of the Queen of Dongling, their real purpose was probably to find out the strength of Dongling. These days, King Yun deliberately read several Dongling history books and learned about Dongling from other aspects. Then he came to a conclusion that Dongling has an empress once every 200 years, and the queen has a harem like the male emperor. In this way, does it mean that his omnipotent uncle will compete for favor with other men? Moreover, the royal nobles of various countries came to Dongling with envoys. If they were like the last time they came to Dezhou, they all had the attitude of marriage. Would Rongyu and Nan 11, who had just arrived in Dongling and had an unstable foundation, have the confidence to refuse? Will these coronation ceremonies directly lead to pressure and coercion from various countries on the royal family of Dongling? The more Prince Yun thought about it, the more he felt that Dongling must be very lively now. He even couldn't help wanting to go and see for himself how the empress's coronation ceremony was different from that of an ordinary male emperor, and how his uncle dealt with the empress's concubines. But reason stopped him. Author's words. The recent plot progress has been a bit slow, I know it myself, but I am also worried that the babies have too many doubts in their hearts, so I will write some plots to solve them. In addition, I occasionally adjust the atmosphere, so it doesn't look so tight, and try to speed up the plot in the future. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 360. He has not yet taken full power. Not to mention that the northern frontier iron cavalry is ready to move, even his brothers have been secretly trying to do something. If he really went to Dongling at this time, I wonder if the uncle would directly expose him. Prince Yun has a strong desire to survive. He feels that although it is tempting to join in the fun, his own life is obviously more important. With this thought, he honestly put his mind to it and discussed government affairs with Qilin and Wenling seriously. It was the middle of winter in the 12th lunar month, and the weather was so cold that people shivered. Fortunately, the weather was good. Except for a little snow in late November, the weather was sunny and cloudless since the beginning of the 12th lunar month. Everyone was looking forward to it, and finally ushered in the most important day of the 12th lunar month, the 9th day. Well, the 8th day of the 12th lunar month is Princess Feng's birthday, but the birthday is far less important to the royal family than the coronation ceremony. Considering that Princess Feng is already 5 months pregnant, the clan members think it is not appropriate to be too tired, so they held a simple and warm family banquet for her birthday. Rongyu and Nan 11 had no objection to this. They didn't need to make a big fuss at the birthday banquet, not to mention that the coronation ceremony was on the day after the birthday. The grand and prominent ceremony was the best blessing for the birthday. The 9th day of the 12th lunar month was auspicious and everything was going well. Princess Feng's coronation ceremony, the emperor's title was Ronghua, Rongyu was appointed as the emperor's husband and regent, with the power to make decisions on state affairs, and he and the empress ruled Dongling together, and a general amnesty was issued. As soon as the decree came out, the world was shocked. At dawn, all the palace servants were already busy, helping Princess Feng and the regent change their robes, comb their hair and put on their makeup. The 10-mile red carpet covered the ground, extending directly from the imperial road of the imperial city to the priest's hall. According to the Dongling custom, the first procedure of the coronation ceremony is that the emperor-to-be bathes and changes clothes in the palace, then sets out from the palace in full dress, rides the dragon chariot to the priest's hall, and accepts the worship and witnesses of thousands of subjects in the imperial capital along the way. After entering the priest's hall, he burns incense and serves the gods accompanied by the high priest and all the priest's servants, accepts the sacred duties and powers bestowed by the gods, and completes the procedures of the priest's hall step by step, and then returns to the palace, and ascends the treasure hall under the witness of civil and military officials to accept the worship of all officials. Although it sounds simple, the process is extremely cumbersome, and each step has very strict requirements. After a whole day of tossing, only fatigue is left. Fortunately, Nan 11 is pregnant and has a little advantage. Many links that require kneeling are exempted openly. The royal family and the officials responsible for presiding over the ceremony were not prepared for how much cooperation the queen can have. With a doting and overbearing regent, they learned to be smart early on. Instead of letting the regent interfere in the ceremony, it is better to exempt Her Majesty from all the kneeling parts in advance to avoid disputes and spoiling the atmosphere. It is just that kneeling is required after burning incense in the priest's hall. The dongling subjects are born with respect for the gods and the priest's hall, so the high priest has almost the same supreme throne as the emperor in dongling except for different duties, and no one can blaspheme or offend. On the solemn and holy high platform of the priest's hall, the high priest who has bathed and burned incense, wearing a snow-white robe, holding a golden scepter, stood silently at the highest point of the altar, and many young priests and waiters stood quietly beside him, all in white robes, clean and spotless. Rongyu and Nan 11 stepped onto the long white steps leading to the high platform of the altar and climbed up step by step. This is a sacred and solemn blessing and worship ceremony. Pray for the protection of the gods, carry the admiration and sustenance of thousands of subjects, and repent for the mistakes he had made. The civil and military dignitaries of the whole court stood quietly in the palace of the priest's hall, looking up slightly, looking at the two people heading to the altar. The handsome high priest in white robe had a cold expression, silently watching the two people in front of him, and then spoke lightly in a calm tone, "Kneel." Rongyu helped Nan 11 kneel down in front of the altar. This is not kneeling to worship the ancestors, but kneeling to the gods who everyone in dongling believes in and blesses the world. No matter who you are, you have no right to be willful and arrogant here. Rongyu was silent, and his noble and indifferent face was calm. No one knew what he was thinking at this moment. But Nan 11 understood. They all felt guilty towards the people of dongling and the dongling priest's hall. No matter what kind of grievances and entanglements in that life were forced, no matter how many biases and hidden secrets there were, in short, for the emperor respected by all the people, Empress Jinghua did fail in her duty. And Rongyu, who has been reincarnated with memories, has always had unforgivable sins in the heart of the high priest. In front of the dongling altar, only the emperor can approach it. The high priest's voice was cold and without emotional fluctuations, but the powerful ministers below could hear it clearly. Now that Her Majesty has ascended the throne, she has received the grace of the gods and taken the responsibility of the country. She must take the people of the world as the main thing, create a prosperous dongling era, and repay the grace of the gods. If she fails the people, she will be punished by the gods to comfort the world. Inside and outside the huge and sacred priest's hall, it was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Only the high priest's elegant and cold voice resounded clearly in the ears, with an edict that seemed to come from the gods, hitting the depths of the soul, making people worship in awe. The high priest looked calm, but his calmness revealed a bit of awe. The emperor's husband, the regent, is able to assist him closely because he has been blessed by the gods. However, this is the only time in hundreds of years, and the emperor's husband, the regent, needs to repay his kindness with blood. When these words came out, Nan 11's face changed slightly, and she suddenly raised her head to look at the high priest. Repay kindness with blood. What does it mean? The powerful ministers standing neatly under the high platform were also puzzled, but no one spoke at this time, and they just listened quietly. Rongyu seemed to have anticipated what he would face today. He did not react in any special way to the words of the high priest. His eyebrows were calm and unperturbed. "Golden whip," the high priest said in a faint voice. "Golden whip?" Nan 11's heart skipped a beat. She felt an ominous premonition and turned to look at Rongyu in disbelief. Rongyu did not speak, but just held her hand to comfort her. His palm was warm, which always gave her enough peace of mind, but at this moment she only felt cold all over. A young waiter walked up to the high priest and presented a black-handled dragon-patterned golden whip with both hands. Under the morning light, the golden wire on the whip shone with a dazzling luster. The emperor's husband, the regent, the high priest, held the scepter in one hand and took the golden whip in the other. He looked at Rongyu with a cold and sharp look. "Please undress." Nan 11 finally understood what he meant, and her face suddenly changed. "What does the high priest want to do?" "In front of the gods, please be silent, your majesty." The high priest's voice was light, but the pressure was strong. "This is the rule of the priest's palace. No one can violate it, unless your majesty gives up the decision to let the regent take charge of the government and treat him as a minister from now on, then today's blood sacrifice can be waived."